Catholic Church, real history, tying people to timbers and burning their bodies while they're still alive, burning them at the stake, waterboarding. That's where we get the waterboarding, is from the Catholic Church. That was a favorite in Rome, was to waterboard people, pour water down your throat so that you couldn't breathe, and torturing your body at the same time to make you agree that you love the Lord Jesus and you will turn and be a Catholic, because if you don't, God help you. So the Catholic Church is replete with history of burning people, torturing people, cutting, murdering, torturing. And one picture shows a guy with a baby, killing a baby by bouncing his head off of a stone, hanging people and then burning the bodies, nailing people's and cutting into their knees with saws, cutting their legs off, tying them upside down and cutting them with saws. This is the Catholic Church. This is the rule of Rome, the Holy Father. This is the Inquisitions. The Catholic Church growing in power. This is the way the Catholic Church grew in power. They tortured people until they either confessed or joined the Catholic Church. This is the history of fascism, Nazism, totalitarian fascism, and behind it all is the Church. Now back to the symbol of fascism and what this means for you and your family today. FAS is God's law, FAS, F-A-S, divine law or command. For over 2,700 years, Rome has dominated Europe. And through Europe, Rome has dominated the entire world. Think about that. For almost 2,700 years, the Roman Empire has dominated Europe, and Europe has dominated the world. So for the last 1,685 years, the popes and the Vatican have been the boss of all bosses, both secular and spiritual, in Europe. So all who rule today in Europe and America by divine right do so through the Holy Father in Rome as a representative of God on earth. This is why today American political leaders such as Condoleezza Rice and Nancy Pelosi and the President Bush, as Americans, as representatives of a free people, as Americans, they bow and kiss the ring of a foreign dictator. Does this tell you something about where America is and where it's going? Nancy Pelosi bowing to kiss the ring of a foreign dignitary. That should tell you something about the Bush regime and Condoleezza Rice with her Chessy cat grin. All of these people are traitors. Here you will see in Europe the king and queen holding the earth, dominated by the cross. So here's how this fascist Roman Vatican plays out in the world today. We start off very simply. This is a very quick concept. We start off with the fact that God is in heaven and He alone owns the earth and the universe. So God owns the heavens and the universe, and He also owns the earth, and you'll see the earth in His hand with the cross. And one day God had a son. His son's name was Jesus. God's son was named Jesus, and one day, of course, Jesus grew up and became a man. Later, God's son became King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He's now the king over the earth and over the heavens. Why? Because God the Father created and owns the earth, so he holds the earth in his hands, so to speak. So here's God in heaven holding the earth in his hands. And you'll see the cross dominates the earth. This is why today in Europe you will find rulers with their symbol of the earth and the cross that dominates. Comes directly from God in heaven. So now God's Son, Jesus, has been given the right to own and rule the earth and all life on it for God his Father. So Jesus has the right to rule the earth any way he chooses. So the earth belongs to Jesus now, because God the Father has given it to him. It's his earth and it belongs to him alone. So in fact he is a sovereign over the whole earth. He is a good and kind sovereign, but a sovereign nonetheless. So Jesus owns the whole earth. And it follows that the first responsibility of a sovereign is to lay down the laws for us, his earthly subjects. So therefore we now have something called God's law, that we have to obey God's law. Those laws would be binding on all people of the earth because those laws are in fact God's law. Moses gives us God's law. But since God's Son, Jesus, is living with his Father in heaven, Jesus is now up in heaven with his Father, so someone has to be appointed by God to stand in for and represent the sovereign of the earth, Jesus, and administer his laws and world government for the people of the earth. So therefore Jesus is now in heaven, but he is the sovereign over the earth. He is the Prince of Peace. And therefore the papacy is in position now representing God. The Pope represents God to be the powers behind the thrones. So the papacy and the clergy are always the advisors of kings for Jesus. Since Jesus is not here, the papacy will advise the kings on what is the correct thing to do. This is why you see Bush welcoming the Holy Father so he can kiss the ring and bow down and kiss the ring of a foreign dictator. Here's Bush bowing down to the Pope and getting his orders from the Pope. It's actually frightening when you know who these people are and how this stuff really works. If you don't understand how church and government and commerce work, then you're not going to see anything in this. But if you begin to look at this thing, you begin to see there is no division between church and state. The Vatican, papacy, the Holy Father sits right in the Oval Office. Here Bush goes to visit the Pope in his office. And everybody thinks this is so pretty and so nice, never realizing what this church really represents. Here's Jeb Bush, brother to George Bush, at the Vatican, on his knees before the Holy Father, which is good. He needs to be on his knees before the Holy Father. And he's knighted in the Knights of Columbus, a Masonic order within the Catholic Church. So it should tell you something about who he is and who he's working for. And there's the Knights of Columbus with their symbol, the fasci, if you'll see the fasci in the middle. The bushes with the Pope. It doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum, as long as everybody remembers who the boss is. Even Democrats, Republicans, peace and freedom, it doesn't matter what political party, as long as you remember who the boss is. As I said, here's Speaker Nancy Pelosi kissing the ring of the Pope. both sides, Democrat and Republican, with the clergy